Welcome, everyone. So I'm talking today, I'm Bruce Calder here. I'm the VP Consulting here at Claigan. I'm going to talk about the Canadian Restricted Materials data reporting in 2024 and to a limited extent 2025. A lot of what is ongoing right now, what's going to appear this year, and also a few report deadlines into 2025. So I'm first going to explain CEPA, the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. It's not easy to understand. I think our national motto for government should be unnecessarily complicated, and you'll see why. And this could be in anything I'm talking about. CEPA is definitely one of the good examples, but I'll talk about the Canadian Plastics Registry and other things too, which go on to that. I'll talk a little bit about the Canadian Management Plan, and then we'll go actually about the tangible parts. So the reporting deadline for January 17th, so a week today, and what you need to have done or how you do an extension if you haven't done it. I'm going to talk about the PFAS reporting that's going to appear in 2024, roughly what it is. I'm going to talk about also something outside of CEPA, the Canadian Plastics Registry, and its requirements and due date in September of 2025. And I'm going to talk also a little bit side chat about the Canadian Forced Labor reporting, which you have to do by May of this year. And then I'll have some Q&A at the end. So the idea here is to be about 50 minutes long and with about 10 minutes of Q&A. Some people may not know about the Canadian requirements. Canada does try to notify individual manufacturers and retailers and et cetera that these requirements exist, but they're imperfect at getting the message. Their message also might be going to your Canadian division or your sales representatives and may or may not be making the trip back to yourselves. So a lot of stuff off the bat in the reportings are on the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, which is a bit complicated. And this is very common in the restricted materials where a lot of people get confused by CEPA Schedule 1. The Canadian legislation is always very, very complex. There is a Schedule 1 which there's toxic substance list, and every so often substances get added to it. However, if you're added to Schedule 1, the toxic substance list, there aren't any requirements at this point in time. It's basically, and TSCA is the same thing. It's like the priority list in TSCA in the US. It's the toxic substance list here where substances are now prioritized for work to be done on them. So basically approving money and effort to be spent on their risk management measures. It doesn't mean they're being banned. It means now they've been approved for Environment Canada, Environment Climate Change Canada, they keep changing their name, to do work on them to see how to manage the risk that they present. And the eventual management of that risk could be restrictions. And when restrictions do appear, they're under the Canadian prohibition of certain toxic substances. So Schedule 1, if you ever somebody says, hey, do you have any CEPA Schedule 1 substances? Sure, you have tons. It doesn't mean anything. Schedule 1 is the substances that are prioritized for work to be done. That work could be anything like cobalt's on that list. Cobalt, they're looking at changing the drinking water limit, which doesn't really affect most physical products. Often, once you're in Schedule 1, they go into the Chemical Management Plan, and there's about 1,500 substances in Chemical Management Plan Part 3, or Section 3, and they do consultations of the use and look at risk mitigation and possibly looking at restriction, and some of these will move to restriction. And the way they do a lot of the data gathering on use and volumes is called a mandatory survey. They're also sometimes voluntary surveys, but the most important ones we care about are the mandatory ones, not the voluntary ones. And under Section 71, they can make it mandatory for manufacturers and importers of products, both chemicals and physical products. So chemicals like shampoo or car lubricant, and physical products like cars or computers or laboratory equipment to have to fill these in. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about reporting. The first couple sections is the Section 71 survey. That's data reporting for them to help build how they're going to mitigate or manage the risk these substances may present. Some may eventually move the Canadian prohibition of certain toxic substances, and that's the restriction. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is the data reporting today, the middle section, the Chemical Management Plan and the mandatory Section 71 surveys, the ones that are mandatory for you to complete, or make a non-engagement letter to say why you don't have these substances by certain deadlines. So Schedule 1, as I said, the toxic substance list does not mean restricted. Schedule 1 substances are substances that are approved for review for risk management measures. Many steps, including this data reporting, which is what we're talking about today, happen between being added to the schedule and the restriction. So we are, for a lot of these substances, like 1,500 and some, we're in the data reporting phase. The restrictions, if they occur under the Canadian prohibition of certain toxic substances. So if you want to look up what substances are banned in products in Canada, look up the Canadian prohibition of certain toxic substances. Children's products are governed differently, and there's some additional things there. But this is the main prohibition. It's under this section. So SEPA, being listed in Schedule 1 SEPA, doesn't mean they're restricted. It means there's approved for more work to be done, which might drag on for years. The restrictions are in the Canadian prohibition. Currently, the restrictions are really limited in terms of physical products, ones that actually apply to SCCP. Chemicals, liquid products have quite a bit more, including PFOA and some other things. The key substances restricted under Canadian prohibition are short-chain chlorinated parabens. They're a substance that's used to enable DHP or DINP to work better in PVC. It's also banned in Europe. It's banned in Canada. It's a UN Stockholm Convention. Banned in Canada, banned in Europe. The restrictions are just slightly different levels, but basically they're both this chemical, which is not uncommon if you're using DINP or DHP plasticizer, are banned in Canada and EU. There are a whole bunch of ones coming up. They're about to ban PFOA in some extent in physical products like articles, which is a big problem for computers and laptops and cell phones and hard drives and virtually all medical devices. PFOA is very common in certain situations there. DECA BDE is finally being banned. It's one of the ROHS substances. Dechlorine Plus, which is a REACH SVHC and quite rare in products, but it does exist. We do see it about once or twice a year in our testing. And DBDPE. DBDPE is probably the most common brominated flame retardant. If you have an electronic product of any complexity, it's not whether you have DBDPE, it's how many times you have it in your product. Very, very common in thin flame retardant plastics. That'll be very impactful. And we expect this one to be announced in 2024, probably restrictions in 2026 or 2027. So these are restrictions. Most like what I'm going to talk about today is reporting, but there are restrictions coming up. A lot of what this reporting is leading into are restrictions like this. So Canada has notified the WTO that they're adding restrictions, PFOS, which doesn't exist in physical products. The only reason you ever find it in drinking water is an old firefighting foam you'll see in airports. So if somebody wants to make news on what they found in drinking water, they definitely want to test a military air base or airport to get PFOS. Otherwise, they won't find it. It doesn't exist in physical products. It doesn't exist in cosmetics. It doesn't degrade from anything you normally use. There's a whole reason that doesn't happen. PFOA, on the other hand, is very common. The little PFA wirings you have in your laptop, to your hard drive will have it most of the time. To your screen, your hard drive vents will have PFOA. Good portion of medical devices will have PFOA in the PFA polymer or the ePTFE. Your clothing will have PFOA all over the place, including the made in China tag will often be fluoroacrylated coated, which is PFOA. They're also going to ban the longer versions of PFOA, just like Europe. So PFNA, PFDA, which are common in the exact same applications. HBCD doesn't really exist in products, and they're now going to ban DECA completely under the polybrominated diphenyl ethers, the chlorine plus, and the super common decabromo-diphenyl-ethane, the bottom of DBDPE. If you have a complex electronic, it's not whether you have it, it's how many times. It's not banned anywhere else. It will be problematic. It will change the parts in your North American electronics. So no data on this one. It's supposed to be published this year. Canada, for better or for worse, is notoriously late on publishing these, which doesn't hurt industry any. And if they do, it'll probably be somewhere in 2026 or 2027 timeline for restriction. So this is the restriction. So this is coming up. So I want to explain the difference in restriction and reporting. Most of what I'm talking about today is reporting. Actually just communicating data, very similar to the US TSCA PFAS reporting coming up, but the Canadian version, which normally means unnecessarily complicated, which is a topic that will keep reoccurring. Don't worry, we can help you with it. We understand unnecessarily complicated. It's a hazard of business, but we definitely can help you with that. So these surveys, when they're mandatory, they're voluntary and mandatory versions. These are the mandatory ones I care about. Voluntary is nice, and you can fill those out, but it's not necessarily business effective. This is the Section 71 mandatory notices. It's mandatory for importers into and manufacturers in Canada. So if you bring your products into Canada or you manufacture products in Canada, this is a mandatory requirement. This is both for chemical manufacturers and importers and physical products. So you make a test equipment or goggles or whatever, that all counts. Professional, consumer, doesn't matter. If you import it into Canada, you're in scope. Now these by the way, if you see HTMLs here that are dark blue and purple, those are hyperlinked. This one's a photo. None of these ones are hyperlinked, but there'll be links later to get to here. This is the current mandatory notice. It's got a deadline. I've mentioned this one before of a week today. January 17th is its deadline, and I'll explain what you fill in for it. It's about 852 substances. It's actually a bit more. It's about 1,000, but one of the categories of the other 200 doesn't really apply to most products. So it was released, and there's a link there to go to it on June 24th, 2023, due January 17th, 2024. Anybody who does our monthly or quarterly updates, of course, we've been talking about this since last year. By the way, if you like this sort of information, we do have a really good service where we sit down every quarter with you or every month with you and explain all the changes and how they impact, or in many cases, we actually explain, here's the change, it doesn't apply to you, this is why. So you know when it comes up, why it doesn't apply. It's mandatory to complete. If you have, now this is the interesting part, you have about 0.1% by weight in any articles or mixtures and over 100 kilograms of the substance. So it's kind of funny. It has to be about 0.1% by weight, and there's some additional scope requirements in 2 pages from now. And you have to have over 100 kilograms of it. So if you imagine it's DINP, which is one of them, which will be in a lot of your wires and cables, it'll be, I don't know, 20% of the weight of your PVC, way over the limit. But you still have to have enough to be 100 kilograms, which means about, doing the math, about 400 power cables a year would be over the limit. There are about 852 substances on it. They're sorted by CAS number. Not easy. I hate when I get things by CAS number. It's one of the reasons why we do supplier work. We often do it. Here are the regulations. Do you comply to these regulations? As opposed to CAS numbers alphabetically, it's much more complicated than people think, CAS numbers. We've pre-processed it. So when in doubt, we've pre-processed. We've actually turned this into a next survey question. Here are about 14 questions. Based on that, we can ask some deep dive questions, but this really answers everything. We've gone through every chemical and where they're used and have a good idea which ones are where. And if you don't even have that where, then we don't care. It applies to all companies importing into or manufacturing in Canada. So by January 17th, you have to either have to do the data report, which is an Excel file, which we can build for you, or you have to do a non-engagement letter, which basically says, hey, we did everything. This is why we don't have any. Here you go. It's a mandatory part. Or if you have to ask for an extension. You get an extension after 3 months, but extensions are not to be entertained after January 17th. So you have 1 week left to apply for an extension. Extension. So you haven't done it. You have to do the chemical data report, or if you can reasonably prove that you don't have it, non-engagement letter, or you have an extension request by a week today. And it applies to all companies importing into or manufacturing in Canada. Now there's a scope part to it. It has to be about 0.1% by weight in a mixture or an article component, and it has to be over 100 kilograms. A few substances over 1,000 kilograms, but I'm not going to complicate that here. Again, the devil's in the detail. It's unnecessarily complicated. The limit's 1,000 kilograms for most substances. However, a couple it's 1,000. We'll help you with that. We've pre-processed everything. And it has to either, if it's a physical product, not a mixture, so if you have it in a lubricant, it counts. So if you sell baby oil or car lubricant, or you have lubricant for your laboratory equipment, it's it. Or if it's an article, it has to be above us. It has to be in certain uses. It has to be intended for children, or come in contact with human mucosa, or has to be in cookware, food packaging, bedding, furniture, flooring. And you might go, I make laboratory equipment. I don't meet any of those criteria. Physical products, awesome. Good. Do you have any in your mixtures? Do you have any reagents? If not, awesome. You still have to do a non-engagement letter. It's much easier. You can say, hey, this is why our physical products don't meet these 7 use categories, and we looked at our SDS or ingredients, not in our mixtures. Here you go. Still have to do it. A little bit easier, but if you do have them above the limits, you have to report an Excel file. It's a really funky thing. We can help you with it. I'm not going to go into all the details here. It's very chemical specific. There's a lot of details. But first thing is, do you have anything that meets these criteria of 0.1% by weight in a mixture of the 852 substances, or above 0.1% by weight in an article, and it meets one of these use criteria, which for many of you won't. And then still it has to be above 100 kilograms. So it's really low volume. You say, hey, I sell lubricant in for my test equipment, but I only sell, goodness, 50 kilograms of lubricant. There's no way even any ingredient would be over 100. So that's fine too. So if you do a non-engagement letter, which we can help you with, if you don't know how to do one, it's pretty straightforward, but you just have to justify why not. When in doubt, you don't know, we have a great project. We've dumbed this all down to some very simple pull-down menu survey questions. If you say yes to a couple, then we come back with very, very specific questions. Cool, you said this. what is that cable you're talking about? It's this. All right, here you go. This is what we're going to do. And sometimes, and we don't have to worry about surveying suppliers for the most part. Once in a while we will, for very specific reasons, saying, hey, turns out you have power cords, you get them all, most of one manufacturer. It's the product is intended for children or can be used by children. Therefore, here's the question for them, or we can just do a quick test on it. We're looking for this chemical, or we can just declare it. It's the INP. So it's about 100 of the 52 chemicals, about 109 are in common usage. About 44 can be reasonably found in products. Two super common ones is mineral oil, some most lubricants, also some baby oil. Mineral oils everywhere. DINP is the most common plasticizer for PVC. So super common. You have a Prop 65 warning, chances are you have one of these. If you have a Prop 65 warning in your product, chances are you have one of them. Not necessarily, but probably. So very straightforward for us to do, but very technically complicated. If you can't get everything done by next week, which makes a lot of sense, and you may have some of the substances, ask for an extension and we can help. Again, if you don't know what to do for this data, there's only so much use. We've done a whole other previous webinar on this particular one and the detailed chemicals and the data reporting and everything. But we have so many different reporting requirements in Canada. We had to be somewhat brief. Again, this one's due January 17th, a week today. If you don't know what to do, contact us. We can help. We pre-process. One of the nice things, we've done so much of this, and we have huge Section 71 experience of consumer products, professional products, medical devices, laboratory, pharma. We've done tons of pharmaceuticals, retailers, chemicals, cosmetics, everything. It's hard for us to be surprised by much. So we have a plan. And if it's a complicated product and you could have stuff in there, we have very simple survey questions that make it a lot easier to drill it down. Of the 852, you know, what we're really talking about is the outer housing on your products because of the UV stabilizers, and this is our plan. So it's really good. Hard to explain all the different details. There's 852 chemicals, 109 or so are in common usage, but 44 are reasonably likely to be in products, about 0.1%. A lot of them are UV stabilizers, but there's some plasticizers, some lubricants, a bunch of other things. So happy to help. Again, just this one of the big things, remind us why we made it so early in this year, and its due date is a week today. So just make sure you get it done. It's mandatory, it's the law. I mean, it's Canada, but still it's the law. So week today. Perfect. By the way, if you have any more questions, feel free to submit in the questions in the control panel. I'll try to get to as many as possible in the end. Meanwhile, so this is the one that was supposed to be a fall 2022. It was released really fall or really late summer 2023. That's the one up front. By the way, why you still scratch outs? The thing that I put there is actually from the Canadian website. It's from Environment Canada and Climate Change Canada. Environment and Climate Change, I don't know, ECC, lots of C's. Canada, they change the names a lot. It's kind of inconvenient. Again, and this is complicated. It was supposed to be fall 2022. It was actually June or July 2023. I'll say fall. That's the first one. Certain substance under the Canadian Management Plan, CMP. So people work with it all the time, call it CMP. Not helpful for people, don't work for it all the time. It's the Canadian Management Plan. That's that risk management for chemicals under Schedule 1. So again, hey, we have CEPA, certain substances we've decided that we should do work on to manage the risk. We'll put them on Schedule 1. They join the Canadian or the Chemical Management Plan, which we're working on, and then part of that's data reporting. So there's a whole bunch of substances under it. There's about 1,500. They picked about 850 to do. That's this one due next week today. And that's why they scratched out, because their website still says, hey, we're gonna do it fall 2022. I'm like, no, you guys actually started it fall 2023, or maybe summer 2023, but you actually did it. It's really helpful if you update your website, which would be so much better if they did actually point to this website and everything and say, hey, here for updates here. Okay, if we want updates there, you should actually kind of update it, especially when you've done things, because the first one is the one we're talking about. The second one was supposed to be spring 2023. It's the PFAS data reporting. So now you have this US TSCA PFAS reporting thing, Jamie, and my favorite word, again, it's a Canadian thing. You also have the state level stuff. There's a Canadian one too. It was supposed to be spring last year. They are notoriously late, which nobody's really pushing them along. Like, if they want to be late, all the power to them. But supposedly they've announced spring, which means probably summer, fall of this year, they're going to do their PFAS data reporting. So like what you're seeing in the US, and that's what we're going to talk about next, you're going to see PFAS data reporting in Canada this year. So you're going to have basically state, federal, and like the Canadian start of basically next year, end of this year PFAS reporting. They're all going to be different. They're all going to be related, but they're all gonna be different. And then, as I said, the current survey, the very first one, is about 850 some substances up to 1,500. They're gonna do the other half-ish, supposedly fall of 2023, which is obviously past. We'll say, I don't know, end of 2024. I don't know, they're notoriously late. And then there's another thing that's gonna happen probably in 2025. It's supposed to be 2024, maybe late 2025. So you're gonna see these at least once or twice a year. That's the big takeaway. They're gonna be later than they say. They're not gonna update their data. When you get them, they're gonna be unnecessarily complicated, but they're gonna be mandatory. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the PFAS one. We don't really know that much concrete about it yet. However, we expect them to, somewhere between March and July of this year, rough guess, there should be another notice saying, hey, we're doing PFAS reporting. Awesome, probably do at the end of the year, more likely early next year. And it's be similar to the US TSCA, however, in their own particular way. It won't use, TSCA uses a lot of their own pull down and use fields. It'll be different. It'll likely be the same data, like the state. So the state level in the US and the federal level in the US will be basically the same data, rearranged differently. This one will be the same data, rearranged a different way. By the way, when we ever do PFAS work for people, we've structured it to have it one level of depth lower than they ask, so we can rearrange it to whatever the EU or US or state level or Canada wants. And it'll apply to all companies importing and manufacturing to Canada, including physical products. PFAS, you have electronics, it's not whether you have PFAS, it's how many times in your product. Most people will say, hey, look at cookware. Yeah, cookware has it once, maybe twice if it has it on the barcode, has it about once. Your electronics, your computer has 20. It's in the antenna, it's in the wiring, it's in the vents, it's in everything. The dielectric, you have Wi-Fi, awesome, you have dielectric, chances are it's a fluoropolymer. So it's one of the best dielectrics. So high performance electronics, doubly so. So PFAS is everywhere. It's honestly dangerous. They're I'm gonna mention you a graph. The next one is where PFOA comes from. PFOA is what's found from physical products and cosmetics in humans. PFOS is not. PFOA is where it comes from disproportionately. 95% of it was probably all from cosmetics until 2022. And then it's probably about 60 to 70% what's left over from textiles, and then computers, medical devices, and a handful of other things. So electronics and medical devices are a contributor, but relatively low. They also don't often touch drinking water the same way as your clothing does. Your clothing goes into the laundry machine. That actually, but funny way, the PFOA, if it's in your product, generally doesn't come out because it's very hydrophobic. It actually repels water, which actually one of the reasons why when we get plumber's tape, which has PFOA in it most of the time, it doesn't come out because the plumber's tape, PTFE, it's rubberized PTFE, it's so hydrophobic, the water to extract the PFOA can't get near it. You need a surfactant. However, your laundry has detergent, which is a strong surfactant, and that's a place it'll come out. So the PFAS data reporting Canada, probably announced, probably by the middle of this year. I'd like to say I have an inside track on it. They've even actually talked personally to companies saying, yeah, we're doing it, but they often don't get around to doing it yet. They eventually do, eventually. It's not like ECHA, which usually covers their schedule in Europe. So that's the next one coming. It's going to be sort of like the US one, just the same data rearranged in its own particular way. They'll likely announce something early to middle of this year. No, it's this year now, it's 2024. And reporting is probably end of year, likely start of 2025. So this would be another mandatory. It'll be the same thing as the one that's due a week today, but for PFAS. And there'll be another one next year on a bunch of other assorted complicated chemicals they haven't got to yet. So that's section 71. It's not the only reporting happening. This one is the doozy. This is the mother, and this is going to be the recurring one. How it's going to manifest. Well, I know it's going to manifest right now, but it's under consultation and subject to change. The creating, Canada is planning, and they've even announced in the news, so it's harder for them to backtrack on, a registry. And by the way, when you see that kind of purplish dark blue in our presentation, that's a hyperlink. You can go, when you get the slides, you can click on it and go to this page, which is semi-helpful on the registry. So they're basically, if you have packaging or EEE in scope of ROHS, basically, agricultural products, white goods, textiles, automotive, or construction, or should right here, single-use plastics, which are kind of like packaging, you're in scope of the plastics registry. You're like, well, my electronics only have some plastic in it. Yep, it's in. a lot of things. So it applies to a person who's a producer of a plastic product, which means either if the product's sold in Canada and you're a brand owner and you have a location in Canada, it's you. If you're a brand owner but you have no, so if you're Acme company, I apologize, you're actually Acme company, but you're Acme company and you make everything say in China and your main office is in the US, but you have an Acme Canada in Toronto, you're in. If you're Acme company and you're in US and you make it in China and it's sold by Hillbilly Brothers or the River Valley people, Distribution Canada, it's them because they're the first importer, and you're not located there. So if you have the brand owner has an office here, like you have an Acme Canada, you're it. If you don't have an Acme Canada and your products are sold, it's the importer. So people can't get around things. Plastic products include, among others, packaging, single-use products, and electronic and electrical equipment, which is very confusing because they're meant to be what the ROHS is, but ROHS electrical and electronic equipment. They're using electronic and electrical equipment. The category numbers are different, but they're the same as the EU. Medical devices are in, for example, but not implanted or infected, which is fair because they don't really expect to be recycling implanted or infected devices. So if they're blood contaminated, being biocontaminated disposal, they're not worried about those in the regular waste stream. What they're trying to do is figure out what they're getting back in waste and how to deal with it. Some because it floats up on the shores. If you ever go on the shore, especially the East Coast here, you can see like every jetsam and flotsam of plastic you could imagine. So it's the sort of thing they want to get rid of. And in this includes electrical and electronic equipment, which they call electronic and electrical equipment, which is no end of confusing. But it's if you're in scope of ROHS, so we're assuming right now they're using the ROHS names and categories, even with different numbers. Your fixed installation, that doesn't count because you're not in scope of ROHS. But it includes medical equipment, laboratory equipment, all that kind of stuff. You're in single-use plastics, not just cups and plates, but any single-use plastics in and packaging. So even if you don't make a lot of the other criteria, your plastic packaging is in scope, which includes your foam. By the way, plastics can be a lot of things. It can be the polymer, they can be a rubber. So they can be a polymer, like your polyethylene bag. They can be a rubber, like your car tires are rubber, but they're still plastic. And they could be an amorphous, like your circuit boards or amorphous. The epoxies are amorphous, basically plastics, and they're in scope 2. So there's a whole bunch of things. Single-use plastics is a very open term, by the way. It means a manufactured item that's designed to be used only once or for a short period of time for its original purpose before it's discarded. So it looks like this includes medical plastics too, if it's not implanted and infected. Non-electronics. So all the medical electronics are in anyways. Non-electronics are likely in unless they're infected. Like you have a tube that would be biocontaminated to life, it's not in, but you get tubing that is not biocontaminated into life, it's in scope. It's generally assumed the fixed installations exclude, but they're really unclear on the subject. So they also, this Canadian legislation, have the most impressive, interesting, unique definitions. They try to define everything, like they define a snowmobile in the legislation, which I think is self-evident, but I kind of live here. Maple syrup, tubing, and taps, and what a spile is, which for most people it won't really matter, but it was a pretty piece of interest for me because I've seen a million spiles, I've used spiles in my life. So normally when you tap a maple tree for maple syrup industrially, which is pretty darn common around here, especially in about 2 months, you basically put tubing in, you put a tap into it, that tap attaches to a tubing is the tap. And then basically the way the whole thing's structured is it all goes downhill. So it's really simple, there's no pumping. It literally, all the tubes are set up with the trees to run downhill. As the sap runs, it goes down the tubes and downhill into a collection. And that's where you start collecting it then to boil it and refine it into a thicker, more syrupy situation. And so they're saying, hey, that's a lot of plastic waste, including maple syrup, tubing, and taps. They also include spiles if they're plastic, which is not the most common. What a spile is, if you put a tap into a tree and you attach it to a tube, that's a tap. If you do it the old school way, which I did growing up, definitely Canadian, I think, or Northern US, is you put this spile, the thing on the bottom right, into the tree and you hang a bucket underneath it and the sap runs out of the spile into the bucket. So if it's plastic and a spile, it's in scope. Not that it really matters for most of you, but this is just giving you an idea of kind of where their brain's going. It's really interesting. They also have to explain troll, which troll for most people means a totally different thing. Trolling here means, fishing with a line or hook, towing from a vessel. There's a lot of fishing equipment in this, by the way. because they're quite concerned about fishing nets and that kind of stuff coming up on shore, which is pretty reasonable because I've been to the shore in the Atlantic Canada many times, and it's definitely a problem. All the fishing gear ending up as the plastic floating waste on the shore. So troll, they also define what a pot is, which most time in Canadian legislation, or what people think about Canada, they would think pot means something different. They call that, cannabis here. No, it means a type of fishing gear. It's the lobster trap or the crab trap, which, if you go again to Atlantic Canada, it's a big thing. So they have a lot of really interesting definitions in here. They don't really help you too much with electronic equipment, but they go into lots of detail of what a pot is and a lobster trap. Not the most helpful thing. Again, the Canadian legislation is often unnecessarily complicated, and sometimes they go down rat holes that really don't help anyone, like trying to explain the act of trolling or fishing, the troll line. Sure. But they don't really go into much detail about electronic equipment. Now, this is from their website. They say, hey, the registry opens June 1st, 2025. I'm like, that's really cool. Most companies don't care when it opens. They care when it's due. It's due end of September 2025. So your first plastics submission, which I haven't told you what's in it yet, is due, starts June 1st, 2025. It's due September 2025. Again, unnecessarily complicated on the website. They give you the starting date, but not the due date, which is not helpful. So due date, September 25th, 2025, you have to report the plastics in your products and your packaging from the 2024 calendar year. This one, I'm sure everybody's gathering that right now. Big smiles. You have to have the identity of the resin used to make the plastic product, which would be really cool if it's like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 thing we're used to. No, again, unnecessarily complicated. They have their own ASML variant codes. It's like, if you've ever seen the show Loki, I feel like it belongs in there. You need to have the source of the resin, which is biodegradable, virgin, recycled, used to make the plastic products. Is it single reusable in electronics, and the number of tons in the Canadian market? That's year one. In the future year, they're going to ask you tons of questions about how much you collect, divert, recycling, incinerate. Don't know. A lot of companies are like, industrial companies are like, none in the future years. The ones that have consumer products and EPR type programs may have useful numbers. So you're going to be reporting on the resins used to make your plastic products in 2024, the source of the resins, the category of plastic products, single, reusable, electronics, and quantity in tons. So for example, ABS resins, which are ASML variant code 281114110. I know, not convenient. By the way, they don't match. They don't match the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, it's something. Anyways, we can help you with that. And a lot of epoxies are in one thing, thermoplastic, TPU, and TPE are under different categories. Complicated stuff. Imagine, say, ABS resins in our products, we have 5 tons, virgin fossil-based conventional resin, which is non-recycled, which is the common type. Its category is, we're actually telecom equipment, category 2 here. I know, they use the ROHS categories, but with different numbers. They actually use the EU ROHS categories just to use different numbers. Kind of inconvenient. Unnecessarily complicated. Just use the EU ones. We can use the EU definitions. Why don't you just use the numbers too? But whatever. PVC resin, if you're going to use plastic, why don't you use the international codes? Nope, they're going to use ASML variant codes. All right, PVC is 281114220, 1 ton virgin fossil-based conventional resins, and again, we're telecom equipment. Or it can be medical devices. It just depends what your stuff is. So that's the reporting you're going to have to do by the end of September. It might change a little bit in between. So when in doubt, we can help you with all that. There's a consultation open till February 13th. By the way, again, if you have that purplish, dark purple, bluish underline, that's a hyperlink, and you can go to the consultation. It's open until February 13th, 2024. You can put your 2 cents in, how it impacts you, or what's complicated about the whole thing, or what makes no sense, etc. Which we put a lot of that in that category. But there's a consultation until February 13th, 2024. There's a link there if you want to push any feedback. So that's the plastic registry. This one can be fairly intrusive to do, involved to do. When in doubt, we can help you. It's easy for us to get you the numbers. However, it could be subject to some change in between. But when it comes out, we can definitely help you with it. But do realize that you're going to be reporting on the plastics in your products and your packaging by volume in tons, and by plastics categories, in 2025. Now, one of the nice things also, we have some plans on base templates used for circuit boards. Instead of worrying about all the details in your circuit board, you have a circuit board, here's the average breakdown of plastics on it, just use that. So on and so forth. I know this is a doozy. So again, if you have any questions on this, feel free to submit in the control panel and I'll get to as many as I can at the end. Just a reminder, so this is not chemical data, but often the chemical data do the same stuff. This is close to the conflict mineral side. It's modern slavery. Canada approved Bill S-211 in May 11th, 2023. It's an act to enable the Fighting Against Forced Labor and Child Laborers in Supply Chain Act. You know the modern slavery, UK modern slavery, and California transparency supply chain? Yeah, it's that, but unnecessarily complicated. It's the Canadian way. So you have to report on the specifics of your forced labor and child labor to the government May of each year. And the first one's May of this year. So you know what you do when you put this thing up on your website, and if you don't know, look up put your company name in modern slavery, and you'll probably go to your web link you need for UK modern slavery, for California up on your website, and that's the same program, except you can't just put it on your website. You do also have to put it on your website, but you can't just put it on your website. You actually have to submit it to the government, both your plan, which is roughly what you're putting up on your website, and there's a whole pile of fields you have to enter in online. So, by the way, if you have an active program like for UK modern slavery, we can it's basically the same program, but fill in all the details for you. So make your life a lot easier. So you're in scope if any of the following: you're a publicly traded in Canada, or you have a place of business in Canada, or you meet two of the bottom three. So either A, you're publicly listed in Canada, or you have at least $20 million of assets in Canada, and it has generated at least $40 million revenue in Canada, and or it has at least 250 employees in Canada. So the bottom, you have to be two of those three. So you either have to be publicly listed in Canada, or you have to meet two of the bottom three. You have to be at least $20 million of assets in Canada, and or generated 40 million in revenue in Canada, or have over 250 employees in Canada, two of those three. Then you have to submit this. So it's publicly traded automatically, but if you're not publicly traded, you have to meet two of the bottom three: at least $20 million assets in Canada, generated $40 million revenue in Canada, or employees over 250 people in Canada, two of those three. Generally, if you meet one, you meet the other two. But you have to, at least one of the two, you have to meet two of the bottom three or be publicly traded in Canada. If you don't meet two of the bottom three, never mind. You dodged a bullet on that one. So what you have to submit is there is a long form question. So by the way, the thing down below is ours. So we've taken all their HTML questions, just turned it into an Excel. So you work with us, it's like here are the pull down menu answers. Here's where you have to enter, because it's pretty funny when you do it online. You're like, you finish one page, you go to the next one. Damn it, I wish I knew these questions beforehand. And so here are all the questions. It's relatively straightforward. And if you don't want to do it yourself and you have a program, believe it or not, we can pretty well convert it from what you already have. And then you attach, like what you have for UK modern slavery, it's the same thing, just like got a relabeled for Canada. You have to hit like 5 different points. We'll walk you through that. You probably already have. There's 5 things that have to be in your program, or at least have discussed in your program. It's the same as basically UK modern slavery. So it's basically the same declaration and all this web stuff. So you have to fill in its pages and pages and pages of web stuff. Additionally, when in doubt, if you have a program, we can just convert it. So we've broken the whole thing down into a simple questionnaire. So you know the questions beforehand. Most of them are pretty easy. So we can either do the whole thing for you. If you have a current program for UK or California Transparency Supply Chain, it's basically just a translation exercise. Or if you want to do it yourself, we can help you do it and give you the questions and help you through it. Or if you want to do it yourself, we can also just review it. Hey, your program has to have these 5 steps. Let's just look and make sure the 5 steps, review your answers, and just have somebody double check it. And it's going to be the first time you've done it, or your lawyer's the first time they've done it for Canada. We can double check it for you. Whatever you want, we can do it for you. We can support you doing it, or we can just double check your answers. It's relatively straightforward. So this one's also due May this year. I know it's a lot all of a sudden. Where did Canada come from? I don't know. It's kind of like US's hat, but today the hat decided to make noise. I can't believe I just said that. Anyway, whatever. Section 17. This first Section 71, the one right now, is due a week today, January 17th. You have to either do your chemical data reporting in an Excel file or a non-engagement letter, or ask for the extension. You have only 1 week to ask for an extension. And can you get one? Yeah, you almost always do. You just have to ask for it. If you don't, the due date for asking for one is Wednesday of next week today. Your forced labor report in Canada is May of 2024. Want to know we can help or translate your current program into it. And around the end of 2024, early 2025, you're going to have PFAS data report in Canada. More likely 2025, we will see, depending when they put the notice out. It's basically the same as the US federal, just done in their own way. So similar data, just completely rearranged. 2025, right now, you're getting in September of 2025, you're going to have to report the plastics in your packaging and electronics and single-use plastics in 2025. And the details might change a little bit between now and then because the consultation is going on, but they're pretty adamant about the reporting. They say, well, you're just going to have to report. You don't have to do anything. Reporting is harder than they think. So that one is September of next year. And it's based on the plastic in your packaging or products you're selling this year, right now. So it just give you a heads up. It's because based on what you're doing right now. So it's going to be kind of fun to do after the fact. Just know it's coming up. When in doubt, we have an easier, still takes work to do it. We can do it for you. We can get pretty good aggregated numbers that are as good or better that the Canadian government can possibly imagine out of you without making your life too difficult. So I'm a little out of schedule on this one. Canadian side, I talked a little bit fast about time. It's a bad habit. On the bright side, there will be a recording of this available online where you can revisit this. You can slow it down. The hilarious the thing about the way I talk and speed in my Canadian accent, there is a closed captions part on GoToWebinar where it actually can translate and actually, put the script. It can't do me. It's hilarity. Or it could be just me slurring or blurring words together. Probably a bit of, door number one, door number two. So we can actually produce a script of these. It's a random word generator. For most people, it's actually pretty reasonable. But you can actually, when you get the recording, you can slow it down if you choose, and put me on volume, and it's a little more easy to understand. But again, ask any questions you want. Again, we're looking at these due dates, 2 at least in 2024, possibly one end of 2024, early 2025, and then the plastic registry later next year. But it's based on what you're selling this year. So stuff you're doing right now, it's that stuff. But it's complicated. When in doubt, just feel free to reach out. We're happy to help, and I'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Again, anybody who registered will receive a copy of these slides probably by tomorrow if our system works. If not, day after, and then the recording should be up around the same time. Does CPO apply to components, transistors, diodes, etc.? Yes, it applies to any physical article. So it applies to chemicals and physical articles. So pretty well everything. Doesn't apply to like thoughts, but pretty well anything else, chemicals and physical products. What is human mucosa? It's the mucus linings of your body. It's all the mucosa except for eyes. So nose, ears, mouth, probably one other orifice. That part of contact. What happens after submitting a non-engagement letter? Should we expect receiving an acknowledgement or confirmation letter? Yeah, that would be cool. Maybe. So one of the actually more complicated parts is it's supposed to be a Canadian entity that does it, but the US entity sometimes does it. Seems to work. We'll see. They often confirm they've received it, but it's like a automated response. So get an automated response, and then they probably won't do anything. They'll record it. They have a system. They put it on their end. By the way, if you actually have to do the CPRA Section 71 reporting, it has some similarities to TSCA. So in TSCA, you have to register as an individual for reporting. So like I have to register myself, and then you have to connect your ID in the US to the company, but it's your ID. And so it's an individual human, their ID, and in the US it's attached to your social security number. So as a foreign national, I have to do a more complicated thing to report in the US. You have to basically fax in proof of who you are to a location in Washington. But in the US, you get an individual ID, and that gets attached to the company. And it's the company's responsibility, if you leave the company, to sever you from the TSCA. Canada's the same thing. You can get a Government of Canada number, which is social insurance number, attached to our social insurance number here in Canada. A foreign national is a way to do it. And then you then attach it to the company and do the reporting under your government number, not the company's. If you leave the company, it's the company's responsibility to make sure your Government of Canada number is severed from the company. The Government of Canada number can do many other things too. It's quite powerful. So the non-engagement letter, those email, and it won't be attached to government. So if you do a submission, it's attached to the individual's Government of Canada number. If you do an email, it's attached to the address and email you put inside it. So you have to put address information inside the non-engagement letter, and they'll be attached to the fact you've completed your work. If we send a declaration on engagement because our business is out of scope for mandatory reporting, doesn't meet the weight or use categories, but products have reportable substance in them above the concentration level like DINP, do we need to send a declaration of stakeholder interest? Only if you're interested in it because you're not in scope. So for some reason you want, there's also, by the way, a declaration of stakeholder interest that you want to keep kept up to speed on a substance. So for example, it's like, hey, we don't meet the requirements. We'd like to know what you're doing about DINP. You can actually submit a declaration of stakeholder interest saying, hey, we're out, but can you put us on the list for any DINP mailers? Yeah, it's a separate thing. You can definitely do that. You can do it. You can say we're out of scope because we don't contact children or mucosa, but we use DINP. We would like to be kept on the mailing list. It's called the Declaration of Stakeholder Interest. If you want to know how to do that, just reach out. And you basically put yourself on the list, basically on the mailing list in an official way for a specific substance. So when you do a Declaration of Stakeholder Interest, which I didn't really talk about here, it's if you're actually interested in where a substance is going, but you're not reporting it. So if you report it, you'll be on the list anyway. But if you stay using DINP, which most electronics do, but you're not contacting children or don't meet the weight requirements or human mucosa, which your power cords probably aren't touching very often. They shouldn't be gummed too much, mouth. But you still do a declaration of stakeholder interest, which puts you on the mailing list of how they're regulating DINP. So there is a declaration of stakeholder interest if you want to keep up to speed. So they're separate and you can do both. Does every company that manufactures in Canada that does not import the 7 listed product types need to submit a non-engagement letter? Yes. And includes, by the way, chemicals. Chemicals are also in there. If you bring in lubricants, yes. Unless you're very small, you have to do a non-engagement letter saying, "Hey, we've done the work. Doesn't apply to us." That's why especially for a larger company, you definitely want to do it because you'd be on the radar. That's why we're not reporting. We don't do the importing or manufacturing here. We don't import products in here. It's someone else. We do, but it obviously doesn't, because what we make products that make the packaging for products. Those machinery don't meet any of the use categories. So we're large. We're like the biggest supplier in Canada, but because none of them touch children or food or whatever, we're out of scope. So that's a non-engagement letter. And so basically the government can list against your corporate ID that you've met the work. What does it lead you to believe that the reporting would be due by, for PFAS, end of year 2024, early 2025 for Canada? Because they've said it informally. I know, it's really wacky. So they have this habit of keeping larger Canadian entities up to speed, and then they have these informal conversations every so often it comes out. They've been planning it for some time. Their website says they were going to do it fall of last year. They just haven't gotten to it yet. So it's always been on the calendar. Just the calendar's delayed. So the PFAS reporting in Canada, based on other Section 71s, so imagine it comes out as late as June of this year. The notice, that's January reporting for Section 71. So it's just based on the normal schedule. They're supposed to start it by like September of last year. They didn't. It might be as late as March to June of this year. But that's based on, this is Canada. This is not the US side. So they're completely independent of the US side. This happened to all be in 2025. Our printer toners, consisting of mostly thermoplastic resins, in scope of the plastics registry? Yes, it's a very good question. They're not short-term use; they are repeat use. But whether they be electronics, they probably have the toner cartridges probably have electronics in them, and therefore their plastics will be in. It's a good question. For EE manufacturers, which in Europe is electrical electronic equipment, for Canada's electronic and electrical equipment, don't know why they were that complicated. Maybe it's a French-English translation issue. Who doesn't produce plastic cells but use the plastic in the products, like you have plastic enclosure. So you have a computer and say the outer housing is ABS polycarbonate blend. Yep, that counts. You're in. Does the plastic reporting apply to the EEE manufacturer? Yes, if you have any plastics in your electronics and you bring them in, that includes, and epoxies are plastics too. There's amorphous, and then rubbers, like your car tires are rubbers, your gaskets are often rubber. That is a vulcanized plastic, and then there's the straight normal plastic polymers. So they're all in scope. How do you deal with copolymers and or laminated products? There are some other categories under plastic. So there's another category basically for rigid, rigid type plastics, one for rubbers, and more or less where thermoplastics and thermoplastics and thermal rubbers are. They have some other categories. So there are a bunch. The ASML variant codes have some other categories. So polycarbonate ABS blend is neither polycarbonate nor ABS, and so it's in the other category. And it's like your outer housing or computer is usually not, like if I have a Mac here, that's aluminum or whichever metal. It's the outer housing of most electronics, that plastic, is ABS polycarbonate blend. It is neither of ABS or polycarbonate. It's in the other category. It's one of the others. There's a couple different other categories. We'll help you through it. It's different than the other category, like the 7 used for normal plastics. They have different other categories. Modern slavery, I mentioned that May 31st, a hard deadline. I don't think it'll change. Yeah, it's a pretty tough deadline. However, it is really just reporting on the one you should already have for the UK or for Australia or for California. So it's just a matter of reporting on what you basically already have. They just expect you to report. They tried, in their own in particular way, try to not make it any different requirement than you have for the United Kingdom or for California. So it's just repackaging the output. So you really don't have to do anything different. You just have to describe it in the Canadian way, which is unnecessarily complicated, to the government. But you have to submit it, which is very different than just like the UK where you just put it on your website. Does the plastic reporting requirement only apply to finished electronic products, not to the components themselves? It applies to whatever you're bringing in. So if you're bringing in the finished electronic, it applies to the whole thing. If you're bringing in capacitors to sell, it applies to the capacitor. It's whatever you're bringing in. Same as Tosca, actually. It's whatever you're bringing in. So if you're bringing in capacitors, it's capacitors. You're bringing in computers, it's computers. And that's what you're reporting. It's whatever you're bringing in for electronics. Oh, the thresholds are in Canada. So asking for the criteria for modern slavery, it's assets in Canada, sales in Canada, employees in Canada. It's all Canadian, not global. So it's in Canada to meet the criteria. We have to have either $20 million of assets in Canada, $40 million of sales in Canada, and or 250 employees in Canada, 2 of those 3. Or you're publicly traded in Canada, then you're in anyways. Oh, great, a lot of great feedback. Really good webinar, thank you. Try. Can US manufacturers submit required reporting on behalf of all Canadian importers? Does this need to be completed by each importer? Actually, it's so funny, whether it's Plastic Registry or the CEPA, both are allowed. So if you say, hey, I have all these different distributors bringing in, can I just report for everybody? Yes. Or the distributors can report individually. As long as you're reporting, they're okay with it. And if it doesn't quite meet the criteria of who's in scope, they're okay with it as long as somebody did it. If they say, hey, at the end of the day, this company's really the one in scope, but these 3 companies did the reporting, fine. Or these 8 companies, the one's really in scope, but the brand owner did it anyways, because it's just simpler that way. Yes, you're allowed to do that. There's whole provisions in there for somebody else reporting for a company that's required to. Saying, hey, as long as you've done it, and you say at the end of the day, so-and-so did it for me, then it's fine. How does the Section 71 survey in Canadian plastic reporting apply to aerospace and defense products that contain EE? That's a very complicated question. So if CEPA can apply to it, which they can't always apply to military, but they normally apply to aerospace. It all applies. However, in the plastics registry, if your equipment doesn't fit one of the RHS categories, it's also theoretically out of scope. So if you're not an RHS, the plastic registry doesn't apply to you except your packaging. The CEPA Section 71, very good question. Sometimes military can be out of scope. However, it's generally assumed aerospace is in. Aerospace often gets different exemptions when the restrictions come out. So they do want the aerospace data. It's kind of important. Military, often you can get that excluded for confidentiality reasons, but aerospace is normally. However, plastics, if you're not in scope of ROHS, then you're really not in scope of this except your packaging. What is the definition of cookware in the document? There is a definition in it. It's basically The surfaces that touch food. So if it's a frying pan, it's the part that touches food. If it's a blender, it's the food contacting part. It's not the whole rest of the blender. You can report the rest of the blender, but it's the food contact surface in the cookware. If one of the Section 71 substances is in a product about 0.1%, but it's an impurity, it's still reportable. Yes. It's a high impurity, but yes. By the way, one impurity you're going to just drive you nuts around July of this year is there's 2 new SVHCs coming. By the way, there are 6 for January 23rd already approved. This isn't published. There's 6 new EU, 5 plus 1 new SVHCs January 23rd of this year. The ones expected for June or July, there's 2. One of them, diethylmyl peroxide, is the vulcanizing agent for silicone rubber and most non-sulfur vulcanized rubbers, super common. However, if you vulcanize it very well, it goes below 0.1%. It's residual impurity. However, if you've got cheaper gaskets and didn't vulcanize as long, you can basically cut the curing time in half and still be a reasonable part, then you'll be above 0.1%. So it's like Europe, it's above or below 0.1%. Doesn't matter if it's an impurity. There will be an impurity called diethylmyl peroxide, DiCup, what a wonderful name, in Europe and SVHC, which is gonna drive you bonkers second half of this year. The Section 71 PFAS reporting for which category of products required? All. Anything is really not governed by military, and military is an interesting question. Everything's in scope. If you don't report Section 71 PFAS, is there any penalties? Yes, it is a violation. They can penalize you whatever they feel like to make you comply. It's Environment Canada. Environment Canada is different. It has enforcement officers. It's not the powder puffs in Health Canada. Somebody's from Health Canada here. I apologize. Not really. Environment Canada has officers. They have badges. Enforcing is something they do a lot of. They're allowed to actually go and inspect your premises. They have a lot of powers actually. So they can stop you from selling. They will normally warn you and penalize you and fine you first, but they have pretty unlimited powers, especially if you're flaunting it. So Environment Canada is much stronger in the enforcement. Weirdly, in Canada, if it hurts a human, the enforcement's pretty weak. Like the main substance that causes attention deficit, US, Canada, perfectly allowed, gets on everything. Easily you can see it's hand-to-mouth contact, and that's where it's getting in and causing attention deficit. That's human, it doesn't affect, that's not restricted anything anywhere. That's Health Canada, except for some children's products. Environment Canada, though, is much stricter. They have a lot more enforcement power. It affects flora and fauna and fish and kitties and dogs. The enforcement is much better. It's kind of like in a movie. You see a movie, 40 people are gunned down, nobody cares. One dog gets wounded and cries, everybody's sad. The enforcement here is like that. True. Perfect. Well, thanks muchly for all the questions. Oh, here we go. Canada recently issued guidance on the MSA that would appear to make the threshold test global. Have you reviewed and confirmed? Service for PFAS, they're still learning a lot. So I'm going to take a look into that. They don't know what they don't know, which is a lot. And there's very different, if you look at PFAS, there's different one for polymers, which is basically fluorine concentration, and versus the fluoropolymer salts, which are in polymers like PFOA, and that's a totally different test. Very good. Oh, another great comment for the webinar. Thank you, very appreciated. Oh, somebody sent me the link. Thank you. I'm gonna look at it afterwards. Does reporting apply to retailers? If they're so it depends on the regulation, but generally if they're the importer, like private label, yes. If somebody else is importing it, like Procter & Gamble or somebody, brings it in and sells it to the retailer, they're the importer into Canada. So it's often private label for retailers. So their requirements usually for things they're importing. Of course, they're importing a product, say from a Chinese manufacturer that doesn't have a location in Canada, then they're the first importer. So yes. So it's anything they're importing for sale that the brand owner isn't located in Canada. So if it's their own, of course, private label, they're the brand owner. Or if it's some, say, Chinese brand that has no offices here and they're importing it, then they're responsible. So retailers, yes. The size related thresholds refer to total assets. It's basically has this preface about Canada. It's mentioned around Canada. Does it describe it well? No. Are there any reach and raw substances in 852? Yes. More Prop 65 substances and a lot of esoteric stuff. It's like all the non-DHP phthalates are there. DHP is not there. It's done previously. It's in a previous reporting. It's like all the so more Prop 65 than reach SVHC. Some, But a lot of them are newer, and that's why of the 852, only about 809 are in common usage, in which only 44 will be in physical products of the 0.1% at all. A lot of them are UV stabilizers. Some are recast VHCs. Some are extended into those families. Not all UV stabilized, and so it's a whole list of chemicals that they're wondering information about. We see all the categories. It's applicable for any electronic products. For plastics registry, sure. For Section 71, it's everything. So fixed installation would be in Section 71, not necessarily in plastics registry. Our business code of conduct includes section forced labor. I presume this is not enough. You still have to report to Government Canada, yes. It'll generally be, if you sell in the UK or meet certain criteria, or sell in California, you'll have the modern slavery or US transparent supply chain, that piece. If you don't have that, you may not meet the size requirements for Canada, but you normally have the UK or California version, which you need also. They're the same requirements, just submitted directly. Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I didn't get to all the questions, running a bit over time. Thanks again to everyone, and I look forward to hosting everyone again soon.